Um, Dr. Sheryl Spitzer Resnick graduated from the University of Michigan with a degree in cellular and molecular biology, and then from Harvard Medical School, and then practiced family medicine for 25 years. She now specializes in natural hormone replacement, as well as being a nationally renowned integrative and functional medicine specialist. She treats her patients wholly and not just a symptom, and looks for the root causes of problems and brings her knowledge of how cells and body chemistry work together to find answers that typical doctors looking at their computer screens don't. She's a real life medical mystery doctor because she looks at things different that regular doctors just don't see. We are really lucky to have her share some of her insights and experience with us to help you achieve optimal health and resilience. If you can't tell by the familiar relation, then perhaps by the immense pride I have. Dr. Sheryl, as she is often called, is my younger sister, and I am pleased to have been asked to introduce her to you.
Thanks, Lynn. That was nice. So Lynn asked me to start off a little bit with just telling you my personal story, which tells you a little bit more about it, that tells you why I ended up expanding my practice into what I now do, which would be called integrative and functional medicine. Not that I don't still do traditional Western medicine also, but I do it with a much bigger toolbox than I used to have. As she said, I was really trained scientifically. I love science. It's what my brain does naturally. I can't remember the names of movies and books I read, but I can tell you things about science from, I remember that stuff. And I'm fascinated by it and I love it. But I was a pretty traditional doctor who pretty much played by the rules in the first 20 years of my practice. And then my personal life, eventually the chronic stress of being a doctor and being up on call every few nights. And I started developing health problems that I now relate to problems with chronic stress causing diseases. But basically between the age of 30 and 40, I had 6 surgeries. And I ended up with a hysterectomy, which I hoped would end my chronic health problems. And at that point, my doctor put me on 2 synthetic hormones called a synthetic hormone called Estratest, which was the only way for women who didn't have ovaries to get testosterone as well as estrogen. And he told me that was that the quality of my life would be better if I had it, even aside from sexual desire. Testosterone is just part of animation and strength. So I was on it really for 8 years, while knowing that it actually made no sense for my breasts because Western medicine often uses a synthetic progestin, which is the worst hormone of all hormones. When people have had a hysterectomy, they say, well, you don't need that one, so just use the estrogen and testosterone. But progesterone is actually what turns off cell growth that's caused by those hormones. Estrogens make cells grow and divide. There's not a turnoff without progesterone. So really for 8 years, I was on this hormone combination. I felt okay, maybe a little edgy, but I felt okay. And figured I would be on it until I had my abnormal mammograms because I assumed it would happen at some point. Then the Women's Health Initiative came out and reminded me that, not only were there problems from cancers from the bad hormones, but that really I was a Spitzer and I was more likely to be dying of a heart attack and stroke, and taking oral hormones is clearly worse for that. And so so it just brought home to me that I really needed to be on something topical through my skin. There was no way to do that through a regular pharmacy. So I called a compounding pharmacy to have them make me this Estratest in a cream. I used it for a month. I felt fine. I'm like, okay, this makes sense of my kind of crazy life journey of having these 6 surgeries at a young age, and realized that I should try to help women get low dose natural hormones through their skin in the lowest dose that makes them feel like the person they want to be, and function like they need to function. And so that was just something that would make sense of what I went through. So I felt good on that cream. And then I was like, okay, now I need to understand how I transfer all my patients who are on Prempro or Premarin, how you transfer them to better natural hormones that look like the hormones in your body. And again, use them topically. So that started my journey of venturing outside the box. It's not traditional to do that. I ended up going to natural hormone conferences. That's where I actually learned about natural progesterone, which turns out to be the natural tamoxifen of your body. And it really was not being used at all in practice at that point, not at all. And that was one of the big revolutions of of that early training. When I first started giving people progesterone, it was truly an amazing experience, and would even give us all goosebumps. It was very bizarre. But now I think of the things I found that natural progesterone does, and again, most people don't use this for women who are suffering in their 40s, but it actually lowers estrogen, decreasing your breast cancer risk, and makes people calmer, less irritable, less angry. It's this perfect hormone. So again, that was my first understanding that the medicine that I thought was the best, there could be nothing better than Western medicine. All of a sudden it was like, no, there's this big gap. They're doing the wrong thing. We're doing the wrong thing for women. We put people on bad hormones for 10 years. It was the wrong thing. So anyway, that sort of started my journey of going outside the box. Unfortunately, that transition didn't really stop my progression of health diseases. And I continued to have issues. My cholesterol went up 100 points. I was diagnosed with osteoporosis. Then I had a bleeding ulcer from the medicine for the osteoporosis. Things just kept happening. And eventually, when I had chest pains at 47, I realized I had to get out of call. I had to stop waking up in the middle of the night because my body couldn't take it anymore. And, but that was a hard thing to figure out and negotiate with my partners because nobody likes being up in the middle of the night. And hospitalists were just starting to be, to come into being at that point. At this point, now the doctors that I work with never go to the hospital unless they're delivering a baby because everything's taken care of in the hospital. That might have helped save my life, but it wasn't part of my generation of healthcare. Anyway, so because of that, I then expanded. I started learning about integrative medicine, and integrative medicine was started by Andrew Weil. Most of you might have heard of him. He was like, why would we limit ourselves to the tools of Western medicine? Why wouldn't we use the tools of Eastern medicine, which has been around for 10,000 years? And he started bringing in alternative healing modalities into medicine. And people who studied integrative medicine then had a much bigger toolbox. People who are in chronic pain, well, you don't just stop with physical therapy or medication, right? You might send them to acupuncture or some other type of body work. And then, of course, there's certain supplements that help with that too. We'll talk about that later. So anyway, that got me to that point. Anyway, so the things that I'm going to talk to you about today come out of this integrative medicine and then also functional medicine. And functional medicine is a newer field even than integrative medicine, and it's much more scientifically based. Functional medicine really looks for the root cause of disease. So you do a lot of tests on people because if you don't test people, you don't really know what's going on. And when you test people, you can find all sorts of deficiencies and things that if you fix them can actually repair their disease, make them healthy. It can totally change their life. So that's now part of my practice. I never see somebody and don't want to do a nice big panel of blood work because I know whatever their problem is, whether they have memory loss or fatigue or whatever, I can help make them better if I look at this data. So the things we're going to talk about today are things that not only can help prevent disease, but also help you recover more easily and fully from disease. It applies to acute illnesses like influenza and COVID, but also chronic illnesses like diabetes, hypertension, Parkinson's, dementia, autoimmune disease, cancer, arthritis. All chronic degenerative diseases come from chronic inflammation. It's not a part of standard of care to measure chronic inflammation on you, but I measure it on every single person I see. There's a high sensitive CRP test developed by one of my medical school classmates, really to figure out why some people die of heart attacks that have normal cholesterols. But I measure it on everybody because it actually just tells us what kind of inflammation's in their body. And I found very affluent people that haven't seen a dentist in 6 years. So they have chronic inflammation from dental disease. Dental disease causes heart disease, heart attacks, strokes. Inflammation is bad. It also causes dementia. The treatments that Western medicine has for dementia hardly do anything. Aricept hardly does anything. It's been shown to decrease admission to nursing homes by days. That's it. So the key is all in prevention. You have to decrease inflammation. Things like fish oil and turmeric, those can actually change the course of your life. So again, the things I'm going to be talking about come from those fields of integrative medicine and functional medicine. And you have to look outside the box to find those things. You have to look specifically for them. There will be some people within your medical systems that do that. Many people that do that have had a life journey that had some issue like mine that made them look outside the box. So many of them end up doing some different types of practices in different locations, whether they are in the insurance system or not, whether they do concierge care or not. There's all kinds of ways this happens. Anyway, so to go back and just explain a little more about the functional medicine part of it, I mentioned that we do a lot of blood tests looking for inflammation as well as nutrient deficiencies. When you have nutrient deficiencies, your body can't do what it was set up to do. If you don't have B vitamins, they are part of every single thing your body does. So if you're low on B vitamins, you're going to be fatigued. You're going to think you have dementia. You're going to have numerous problems. So I test those on everybody. It turns out also that your gut bacteria is a big part of who you are. You actually have more bacterial DNA than you do human DNA. And your gut bacteria make your neurotransmitters. So if you have depression and anxiety, you need to look at the gut, and if you fix the gut, you can really help people's moods. The other disease that I laugh at now because I fix it all the time is called irritable bowel. You probably know a million people that have irritable bowel with diarrhea or irritable bowel with constipation or irritable bowel mix. Those are the diagnostic terms for Western medicine. What does it mean? It means you have a stomach ache and we can't figure it out. But in functional medicine, if you do a microbiome analysis and see how many bacteria you have, or if you have the right diversity of bacteria, or if you have evidence of eosinophilic protein X, which goes up if you have food allergies, or if you are lacking IgA, which is the immune system of the gut, you're going to develop a disease. But once we find it, we can work with it. We can fix the bacterial balances. We can treat pathogens. We can heal what's called a leaky gut. Many people, even, well, for myself, I had a ruptured appendix when I was 8. I probably had so many antibiotics for the month or the 3 weeks I was in the hospital that they wiped out all my gut bacteria. And I probably didn't need another probiotic for 40 years because I wasn't going to eat yogurt back then, and nobody knew anything about that. That might have had something to do with some of the diseases I developed. So now we spend a lot of time paying attention to the gut. Other new fields that we can use are genetic testing, right? There didn't used to be 23andMe. We now know the genes that are, we now know information about almost a lot of your genes. And it turns out there's many of them that have to do with how your body functions. Well, all of them have to do with how your body functions and is, but there's some that are really critical that if you don't know you have them, again, you're going to have problems. So one of the gene defects called MTHFR, or methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase, if you have one gene of that, you will not absorb your B vitamins from regular food well. It turns out I have one gene of that. It means I need 40% more than the average person. If you have 2 genes of it, then you can take all the regular B vitamins you want. We'll do a blood test and say, hey, your vitamins are too high. You could cut back, but really they're too high because you can't transport them inside the cell where they work. And if you don't get things inside your cells where they work, it doesn't work. You're going to feel fatigued, you're going to be miserable, and you're going to think you have dementia because you're taking the B vitamins they told you to, and it still didn't help, but you're taking the wrong vitamins. So you can look at those things. You can do genetic testing, or you can, one of the things I do, which is less expensive than genetic testing, is you can screen people checking their B12 and folate and a homocysteine test, which is this inflammatory protein that's made when B vitamins, it's reduced when you get your B12 and folate into the cell. So when it's high, it causes heart attacks and strokes. And again, Western medicine right now is not looking at that all the time. They know about it, Every once in a while, somebody will do it. But, I had a friend my age, but healthy, thin, fit, had a stroke last Christmas. Stroke, woke up with her drooling and with her hand numb. Went in the hospital, got her normal workup, everything normal. We don't know why you had a stroke. They put her on a big cholesterol medicine, even though it was normal. They didn't look at her vitamin D level to see that she was super deficient. They didn't look at the homocysteine, which was high. And again, inflammation, part of what caused it. And they didn't talk to her about the fact that she hadn't been on hormones for 7 years and had no hormones. And when you don't have hormones, your blood vessels get stiff and unelastic, and you're way more likely to have heart attacks and strokes and dementia. Every study before the Women's Health Initiative showed that. Every study showed that estrogen decreased your risk of dying of a heart attack by 50%. It was only when we did this terrible study that we let the Premarin company fund. So they only looked at Premarin and Provera, two synthetic bad hormones I never, ever, ever use because they've been shown to cause cancer. Because of that, the women of America, particularly of my generation, were really denied hormones. And they already are dying in their sleep, slumping over the tables, dying from heart attacks as their first symptom. There's already rising dementia rates. And again, it's because of this lack of hormones. I assume, like with circumcisions, the pendulum will swing back. Somewhere in the next 5-10 years, they'll document it and say, ooh, gosh, we better start giving people hormones. And in fact, the best of the hormone doctors that have now figured out that if you're going to use hormones for hormone-related symptoms, it's reasonable. The safest way to do it is estrogen through your skin because it makes less blood clots, and natural progesterone because it also doesn't make blood clots and doesn't cause cancer like Provera, nor does it cause doesn't cause blood clots like Provera. So again, just stories to explain that the system we live in, our medical system that you pay huge amounts for your insurance for, it's very limited in what it can do for you now. Doctors that you used to think ran everything don't run it anymore. There's insurance companies telling them what they can order. There's half the money goes to computer companies. And when you go in, half the time they have to be looking at their computer screen because they got to dot the I's and plug things into it. As a doctor, I see records come to me and people have said they did a whole physical on people. It'll come in and the patient will go, they never touched me. What did they do? There's a lot of problems in the system right now. Doesn't mean you don't go see your regular doctor. You got a good doctor, good relationship, and you feel good. But if you don't, I just encourage you to look further. Go outside the box, find somebody who'll spend more time with you and really help you figure out what you need to do so that you live the quality of life and the length of life that you want. Adrenal testing is another thing. In Western medicine, they only talk about Cushing's disease, which is too much cortisol, and Addison's disease, which JFK had and you can die from because you have no cortisol, and everything in between is the same, normal. Well, you don't feel the same when you're just underneath here versus just above here. It's two different worlds. But in Western medicine, where people just look for abnormals, they don't have time, they don't spend the time looking to see where are you in the range of normal. If you're at the bottom of normal in something that's really good for you, like vitamin D, if you're at 31, that's not good. You shouldn't say, oh, good, you're normal. You don't have to take it or take 1,000 units. You really want to be at 50 where it helps your immune system. So again, somebody who's trained to actually pay attention to nutrients and vitamins will actually help you get to an optimal place, which will give your body the tools and metabolic reserve to heal itself if you do get sick. Or I should say, when you get sick, because all of us are going to get something at some point. That's just how it works. Similarly, I have a 30-year-old with stage 3 breast cancer seeing the great doctors at UW Hospital, and they don't even check hormone levels on her. They don't, a 30-year-old with stage 3 breast cancer, they don't even check an estrogen level on her, right? They treat her the same as if she's a 60-year-old. Put her on tamoxifen, which we know increases your uterine cancer risk. And she's meanwhile having bleed like stink periods because of that. I don't understand how they wouldn't do a level. I did hormone levels on her. She had the highest estrogen level I'd ever seen on anybody. And I told her she needed to go in and get one ovary removed because that would at least get her into a normal range fast. And she was already doing everything right, fixing her gut, taking DIM to lower estrogen. She was doing all this stuff. They didn't even look at it. She went back to her doctor and said that. They said, nah, I don't think you need to do it. I said, go to a second doctor. And she did. And they're going to take out an ovary because it will help save her life to not have crazy high levels of hormones in her system. Okay, so that was just a few stories. What else? Again, well, all right. So anyway, what's the message? If you feel like you're fatigued or you're having a problem and your doctor's trying to say, well, it's because you're old, or that's, it's really not your thyroid, it's this, and you really think that it's something else, look harder. Somebody else can help you look harder. You can actually go to a Quest Lab draw site and get your own labs. You can go in and buy labs, and they're a tenth of the price if you don't file them to insurance. So don't feel held back by that. A lot of people will only do what their insurance will cover. Well, then you're only going to get marginal care. So you just have to figure out what you need to do to get yourself better. Okay, now I'm going to take a step back to the basics. So how do we get optimal health? How do we get that resilience? The first tenet is food is medicine. You are what you eat. You are what you don't eliminate. You know what that means. You have to have a good diet. You have to have good digestion, or you won't absorb the nutrients that you eat. I did this extensive functional medicine test that looked at all my amino acids. I was low on like 7 of them, and I love protein. I eat a lot of it. But guess what? I was on Prilosec, and Prilosec totally turns off your stomach acid, so you don't absorb any protein. So the answer wasn't that I needed more protein. It was that I needed to take digestive enzymes to help me digest my food, because Prilosec was turning off the acid that was going to help you start that digestion. But I wouldn't have known if I didn't do this really fancy test that gave me 190 pieces of data. And again, that's not even available in the system. Nobody's going to do that for you. The only diet that's been shown to decrease your risk of dying is the Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean diet is an anti-inflammatory diet. It focuses on whole foods that look like foods. You're supposed to eat lots of fresh fruits and vegetables, like 10 a day. Brightly colored foods, eat all the colors of the rainbow. More is better. You can eat lean proteins and meats and fish. You can eat fats. You want to try to eat healthier fats rather than worse fats. But really, it doesn't limit a lot. It's just eating food that looks like food. That's how you keep your inflammation down. So trying to get foods, so buying foods that are not processed. If you buy something and look at the ingredient labels and there's 15 things on there that you don't even know what they are, BHT and all these different preservatives and food additives, you don't really want that. You want to go for things that have less than 5 ingredients, and hopefully no preservatives, but if there is something, it's 1 or 2, not 20 things. When you can, you want to buy organic food because our food supply is polluted. Unfortunately, Monsanto, which we grew up with in St. Louis, right? Roundup and glyphosate, it is found in everything now, everything. And it's bad. It's also been shown to cause cancer, right? Big lawsuits. It causes lymphoma. They found glyphosate in organic wine from California. I now try and get my wine from France and Italy because our country is more polluted than the whole European continent. We let things into our food supply, and until they're proven bad, they stay there. So we have to prove they're bad and to take them out. In Europe, they have to prove they're safe before they get in. It's a big difference in philosophy, right? We let big companies control our health and what's available to us. It's not the best thing for you. If you're going to eat meat, oh, and I wanted to mention, so Environmental Working Group, EWG.org, they put out a list every year called the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. The Dirty Dozen are the worst fruits and vegetables, and they test every single year that have the highest amounts of pesticides and residues in them that you don't want to eat. So unfortunately, what's the top of the list almost always? Strawberries, right? They're terrible when they're not organic. So anyway, if you pay attention to the Dirty Dozen and really at least try to focus on getting those organically, and the Clean 15 are ones that are less important to get organically because they have much less residues. Bananas, where you can take off the peel, not a problem. I tend to buy organic because it costs pennies more than getting regular, but you don't have to. So it's a good guide if you're not able to, most of us aren't able or don't choose to buy all organic. It's a good guide as to where you want to focus your food dollars. Similarly, if you're buying meat, if you get grass-fed meat or organic meat, which again is going to be grass-fed and not finished with corn at the end of it, it's going to have a better omega-3, omega-6 ratio, which means less inflammation, better for you, better for your cholesterol, and you'll be avoiding chemicals and antibiotics that otherwise would be in the meat because they were fed it in their food. So you just have to make choices. Anyway, again, you're supposed to try to eat the colors of the rainbow. The deeper colors are better, those dark blues and purples and deep reds of beets, all those things, they're really great for you. Fermented vegetables like sauerkraut and kimchi and are great food for your gut and help you give your gut natural bacteria. Kombucha is similar. Yogurt, organic yogurts are good. You need to get enough fiber and what they call prebiotics to help the bacteria live. It's important to drink 8 to 10 glasses of water daily. And really, ideally, you want to get a good filter, a water filter in your house, because chlorine's not really good for you. It's bad, causes thyroid disease. And there's a lot of other things in your water you don't know about. In Wisconsin, we're dealing with these PFOAs, and they come out of firefighter foam that are now in our groundwater. Has that ever been looked at before? No. So they're not even measuring it unless somebody yells at them. Again, try to get a good water filter and drink a lot of it. If you're overweight, it's good to try to consider to lose some weight. A lot of people do intermittent fasting now. That can be done one of two main ways. Either you try to limit your calorie intake to 8 hours of the day, which you don't go straight to doing that because it's a really hard thing to eat all your meals within 8 hours. But if you're used to using 12, you might go to try to get it to 10 and then get to 8 if you can. People lose a lot of weight eating normal foods, not really restricting themselves, trying not to eat crazy, but just by keeping those hours of eating limited, it will get your insulin levels down, which will help decrease inflammation and help you lose weight. The other way of doing it is some people eat normal 5 days a week, and 2 days a week they eat 500 calories. That also helps people lose weight. You just have to figure out what works best for you. Me, not a really good dieter. So I make my goal at trying to get my exercise up, really trying to get 30 to 60 minutes in every day. And I found that my phone actually tracks my steps without me paying attention to it. And now I look at that all the time, and I make sure I'm walking an average of 2 miles every single day. I've got that on my year, month, weekly, daily total. So again, we figure out what works for you and what you can focus on. But of course, regular exercise is another good part of taking care of your body and your health. Sugar's inflammatory. It obviously makes you, it's empty calories. It's not good for you. Of course, tastes good, but you really want to try to keep it limited. And if you are eating something really sugary, eat it with some protein, because if you're eating something plain sugary, it raises your blood sugar very high and then it drops. And then it makes you starving and you want to eat it again. Plus, it's just worse for you. If you eat protein, the blood sugar will be more even and lower. So again, combinations, paying attention to how you're eating can really make a difference. By the way, dark chocolate is good for you. It's anti-inflammatory. It's got a lot of antioxidants. It has very little sugar if you eat dark chocolate. So in integrative medicine, we encourage people, get yourself good dark chocolate. Usually you only need to eat a square or two a day to make yourself happy and get your sweet fix. Again, it's just another thing you can do that's actually good for you. Drinking green tea is another really, really good thing for you that's been shown to decrease inflammation, decrease cancer, and even more recently, decrease COVID-19 replication. So I really try to always have a cup of green tea next to me while I'm doing my work. And I always get in 2 cups and I aim for 4. It's, why not? And decaf green tea works well, just like regular green tea. And it can have any flavor, doesn't matter. Okay, number 2, sleep. Sleep is where your body heals itself. You need to sleep. You need to sleep 6 to 8 hours a day. If you're having difficulty with sleep, you want to try to make sure that your room is dark. Turn off all the appliances with blue lights coming out of them. They mess up your circadian rhythms. They're bad for your brain. It makes your brain not know when the right time to sleep is. If you can avoid your computer screens and your phone screens for half an hour before bed or your TV screen, that's better also. If you really can't fall asleep, consider trying melatonin. It's a natural hormone. It decreases with age. It's actually part of why they think kids do better with COVID than adults, partly related to their higher melatonin levels. Again, it's an antioxidant, anti-cancer at doses of 5 to 20 milligrams, helps your immune system. It's a good supplement, you know. So again, try to get your sleep. 3, the exercise thing. I mentioned moderate exercise actually helps you make more white blood cells to fight infections and more antibodies to fight infections. And it also lowers your stress hormones, which cause premature aging. Again, it doesn't have to be really big hard exercise. A little aerobic is good. Doing some weight training is good. Flexibility training and balance training, I'd say that's the most important. Because if your body's flexible, you can bend and not break. And bones break not because you have osteoporosis, but because you fall. So if you have good balance and you don't fall, even if your bones are weak, you're going to be better. So you have to really work on your balance as being one of your more important things. Eastern medicine knows that. They have, Qigong and Tai Chi and all these other methods that actually really help you work on balance while you're reducing your stress. So number 4 is stress reduction. Again, I relate a lot of my diseases to years of chronic stress. And I actually loved that stress. It wasn't that I didn't love my job, but it was stressful for my body to have to wake up at 2 in the morning when it's freezing outside and icy and go to the hospital. My body wanted to sleep that 6 hours, but it didn't get to for 30 years. And I know that was, again, part of my issue and part of what drove me to move outside the system. Most of us work too much in America. In Europe, they're way smarter than us, right? In France, they go home, they have a nice big lunch, they take a couple hour nap, then they go back to work for a couple hours, they go back. Their life's way more relaxed. They might not live in as big houses, but they live longer and better and happier. So stress reduction is a good thing. It helps reset your nervous tone. So you have 2 nervous systems, 2 parts of your nervous system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. The sympathetic system is fight or flight. It raises your epinephrine and norepinephrine, which raises your blood pressure and your heart rate and increases your risk to have bad events, but helps you run away from the bear if you're being chased by a bear. But you don't want to be running from a bear your whole life, which a lot of us do. So taking deep breaths that help slow you down, doing meditation, yoga, Qigong, Tai Chi, any of those things, they'll actually help you use your parasympathetic system more, and that helps preserve your body. Number 5, an attitude of gratitude. This is where we get into the emotional resilience part of your life. We all know people that see the same cup of water, and some people see it as half full, and some people see it as half empty. The more you can see things as half full, the better off you're going to be. Having a positive attitude really does change how things happen for you. So it makes sense to try to focus on obviously there's a lot of things to be unhappy with in the world right now, but finding what you can to focus on, to be grateful for, is really good for you. Laugh as much as you can. Connect to your friends and family when you can. It's interesting to me that in this time of physical isolation, I'm living in the woods away from everybody right now. My family now has a weekly Zoom call from coast to coast. We've lived from coast to coast for years, but it took the pandemic and Zoom, God bless Zoom, to get us to talk every week. It's beautiful. My college girlfriends have done the same thing. Every 2 weeks, we're on the phone together. We've gone 40 years and not talked that much. So again, there's certain things that have been a silver lining in the midst of this terrible pandemic. Number 6, you really got to address nutritional deficiencies. And again, you have to ask to get them done because most doctors aren't going to look for them. If you're really deficient in the nutrients you need, you're going to get more infections. Really, for 20 years, when I started telling people to take vitamin D, they would come back the next year and go, God, I didn't even get a cold last year. They would notice right away the difference just by getting vitamin D. I'll be talking about a bunch of different vitamins here more at length, but again, you might think that you eat well, and so you shouldn't need to take supplements. And Western medicine would like to tell you that because mostly they test supplements that are sitting in Walgreens and CVS, and a lot of those supplements really don't work. Centrum is a terrible multivitamin. It really gives you almost nothing. The RDA, the recommended daily allowances, those amounts are like to prevent the worst of deficiencies. They don't help your body function well. They're really almost worthless. If you're going to take a multivitamin, which you should, you want to get a good one that's got a GMP label on it, or it's pharmaceutical grade so that you know it's been tested. And you want something with a lot of B vitamins in it because they're so important for everything. Many medications make you have nutritional deficiencies, and most doctors don't tell you about them. Even using sunscreen, which we do to prevent getting skin cancer, right? That's a good thing to do. Well, guess what? It means you don't absorb vitamin D from the sun anymore. So you think you're getting a lot of sun in the summer, but if you're really using sunscreen and not getting color on your skin, then you're not getting vitamin D. And living in Wisconsin, almost everybody's deficient if they're not on vitamin D, and many people in St. Louis are also deficient from my experience. If you get a vitamin, if you don't believe it or you really aren't sure what to take, you need to get a vitamin D level. The range of normal is 30 to 80 or 100, depending on what lab you use. You don't want to be 32. You really want to be 50s, where it actually helps your immune system, where it's shown to decrease the risk of breast cancer recurrence, where it's shown to decrease multiple sclerosis. An easy, inexpensive thing with no side effects pretty much, unless you have calcium kidney stones. My only patients that would have a problem with taking higher dose vitamin D, if you have calcium kidney stones, high dose vitamin D will make you absorb your calcium better. That's a bad thing for people with calcium kidney stones. Everybody else, I've never seen anybody have a problem, even if their level was above the top of the range, 120, whatever, they don't have symptoms. So the whole worry of, oh, it's fat soluble, you're going to get toxic, to me, it's ridiculous. Israel has already done a very good study that showed that most of the patients on ventilators in the intensive care unit with COVID were vitamin D deficient. So what's the most important thing you can take out of this lecture? If you're not taking vitamin D, go buy some today. It's cheap and well worth your time and swallowing a little pill. I mentioned before that I found that I had that I was lacking in a lot of amino acids because I took Prilosec. All of the proton pump inhibitors, the Prilosec, Prevacid, Protonix, Dexilant, all of them turn off your stomach acid. When you turn off your stomach acid, guess what? You lose your first line that kills bacteria. And you also decrease not only your protein absorption, but B12, calcium, iron, zinc, and vitamin C. So again, some of us need to be on Prilosec to prevent terrible heartburn or Barrett's esophagus or esophageal cancer. There's reasons why people use these tools. But if you are on one, really you want to try and get a digestive enzyme that gives you back a little bit of stomach acid so that you actually can digest your food and get the nutrients that you need. If you're on a medicine for cholesterol, any of the statins, simvastatin, atorvastatin, all of them lower your vitamin D, A, E, K, and something called CoQ10. Not all doctors tell you to take CoQ10 if you're on a statin, but CoQ10 is made on the same pathway as cholesterol, and it has to be lowered if you're on a statin. And CoQ10 is part of your energy metabolism of every mitochondria, of which there are millions in every cell of your body. So it's really one of your most basic underlying foundational things for your energy. And it turns out if your mitochondria aren't happy, they flip on cancer genes. They flip off your good genes and put on bad genes. It's not just about getting energy. It's also about keeping your genes working correctly. It turns out while we're born with what we think are all our genes, we're not using most of them. Some of them turn on, some of them turn off based on things that happen in your life. So again, CoQ10 is a great supplement. Again, I'm calling it CoQ10 because usually it says CoQ10 and people hear about that, but really CoQ10 is the oxidized form of ubiquinone. And really you don't want to take things that are oxidized if you can, because oxidation is inflammation. You want to take the reduced form, which means it's in the reduced form, and that's called ubiquinol. More expensive, but much more potent than CoQ10, so that 100 of ubiquinol is like 300 of CoQ10. And again, it's in the more optimal form that will work for you. If you're on metformin for glucose intolerance or polycystic ovary syndrome, tons of people are on metformin in this country, it lowers your B12. Well, you're already at risk for neuropathy, which is often caused by B12 deficiency. And then we give you another medicine, which again is great to get your blood sugars under control, but lowers your B12 further. So get on some B12, check a level, make sure you're doing okay. If you really aren't and your level is good, or it's even high and you're not even taking that much, think about, could I have that gene problem? You can test for the genes, but you can also just go and get a slightly more fancy B vitamin complex that's called activated or methylated, and it'll bypass that problem. Then you'll get the benefits that you need. Steroids. I'd say that's where doctors are good at telling people, oh, if you're on chronic steroids, you got to take vitamin D and calcium and magnesium. I'd say that's a place where we're pretty good about it, because if we don't, people get osteoporosis and break bones, and then probably doctors get sued. So that's one where I see people telling people much more to take what they need. A lot of blood pressure medicines, ACE inhibitors like lisinopril or enalapril, and angiotensin receptor blockers like losartan. Those actually lower your zinc levels. Well, what's the third most important vitamin for your immune system? Zinc, right? So if you're on one of those blood pressure medicines, either get a zinc supplement or check a level. Lately, I've been shocked as I've now been checking way more zinc levels, because it also turns out to be an important part of thyroid function, which is a big part of my practice. I'm shocked by how many people are low on zinc, and they're not people that are on blood pressure medicines. So I'm guessing that there's an absorption problem with zinc that I'm not sure of what the chemical process is, but it's way more people than you would ever think were low on zinc. Things like autoimmune diseases, diseases where your body's attacking itself, like lupus or rheumatoid arthritis. Your body's not supposed to attack itself. You know, something went wrong that caused it. Well, Western medicine's tools for that are to give you something that turns off your immune system. It makes people feel better, and again, there's a place for that. If they're really miserable, it can make them feel better. But by turning off their immune system, right, they can get any infection and they can get cancer. And one of my friends that was on one of those medicines, it was kidney cancer. And guess what? Kidney cancer gives you no symptoms until it moved somewhere. And she was diagnosed and died in less than a year. No family history cancer, never had anything before. It was being on Humira that suppressed her immune system. Like, no question. So let's say you have an autoimmune disease, and let's say you really have to be on one of those things to live in your body. Again, if you went to see a functional medicine doctor, they would say, look, autoimmune disease starts in your gut. It's where the outside world via food meets your immune system, which aligns all of the little villi in your gut that absorb things. So let's say your gut's inflamed from a viral infection, or from taking antibiotics, or chronic stress. Proteins can leak through your gut that aren't supposed to, and your body, your antibodies, which are supposed to recognize foreign proteins and make a reaction against them, do. And then that antibody cross-reacts with one of your tissues. So that it turns out, like for people that have autoimmune thyroid disease, it turns out that if they go off gluten, often their thyroid function improves, and you can even look at their antibody levels and bring them down to zero if they go gluten-free and heal their gut. Well, that's not part of Western medicine. And in fact, most endocrinologists tell people if they have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is autoimmune low thyroid, well, you're going to burn out your thyroid. You'll be on it the rest of your life. Well, I've seen people go the other direction just by going gluten-free and working on their gut. And they don't all have celiac disease. Celiac disease being the main disease of gluten toxicity, where really it's killing them. So what's the message? You really need to have good nutrient levels to rebuild and repair your cell tissues after you've had an infection, just to live, and you really need to have enough in your system that you have reserve for when you have something that taxes your system beyond the normal living. So in integrative medicine, integrative and functional medicine, there's basically a concept that because of these issues and because our food supply is really not as nourishing as it should be, and there are so many toxicities in your body and world that you don't know about, that everybody should be on a really good multivitamin with high levels of B vitamins, vitamin D, fish oil, so that you get more omega-3s, anti-inflammatory. And again, if you're a vegan, you can get algae oil. You can eat a lot of flax and chia seeds and flax oil. The problem is much less potent, but again, better than nothing. Turmeric or curcumin, turmeric, when you eat it plain, it's still good for you, but it's hard to absorb. But that's another thing that's super anti-inflammatory. These things can actually lower that CRP test I was mentioning. And if you lower your CRP, it's going to help prevent dementia. By the way, dementia is just one thing that's bad in your brain. Parkinson's is another neurodegenerative disease caused by inflammation. You can prevent it. You just have to look for these things ahead of time and make sure you're either eating well, and if you're not eating perfectly, then balance it by taking extra omega-3s. The fifth thing that's on the list that, again, everybody should be on is a probiotic. Again, giving your gut back healthy bacteria. Whether you take a pill or you drink kombucha every day and eat your fermented veggies and kimchi and sauerkraut, figuring out a way to get lots of good healthy bacteria and organic yogurt, getting healthy bacteria in your gut, and making sure your gut works, making sure you go to the bathroom every day. I've been shocked in my practice how many women usually have come in and told me that they go to the bathroom once a week. Once a week. I even had one patient tell me she went to the bathroom once a month. That's insane. It makes you sick. If you don't eliminate your toxins and things, you will be sick. So again, if you're not going to the bathroom daily, figure out what you need to do. Eat a few prunes, take a stool softener, take magnesium, which is a natural muscle relaxer and laxative. Eat more fiber, drink more water, figure out what you need to do. And if you're still having problems, talk to your doctor. There's medications that can help. Okay. So now I was just going to, again, review the supplements that are recommended, particularly at this time by the Institute of Functional Medicine, to help your resilience, specifically about flu and COVID at this time, because that's what we're living through right now. But again, these things are good for your immune system overall. The first, again, hate to beat it into the ground, but vitamin D. And vitamin D has been shown, again, not only the things that I mentioned before, but it actually decreases your susceptibility and severity of upper respiratory infections, decreases viral growth. Again, want your level in the 50s. Most people are going to need at least 5,000 IUs daily to get there, maybe 10. The bigger you are, the more you're going to need, because it is fat soluble, so it hides in fat. So a thin person's going to build up their level much faster than a heavier person. Get a level. It's useful. Vitamin C, again, they would recommend 1 to 3 grams daily. Do you need to take it every day? No. Eat your citrus. Stay well. Maybe you don't need to take a supplement of it. But if I start getting sick, if I start getting a cold at all, man, I'm going for my vitamin C. I'm taking 1 to 3 grams of it daily. And I'm taking zinc lozenges. That's number 3 on my list. And again, that will help. It's been shown, many studies that show that it shortens the duration of viral illnesses and is anti-inflammatory. And they're even using vitamin C intravenously in the hospitals for people with COVID. So vitamin C, no harm, water soluble, get some. Number 3, I said zinc. Again, big part of your immunity. You can swallow a capsule. Zinc lozenges are also really good for your surface immunity. So again, I keep both in my house. I have lozenges that I can suck on if I start getting sick. But I took a bigger pill to help bring my levels up into a good range. Number 4 is selenium. Most people don't need to supplement selenium separately. If they're taking a good multivitamin, most of them will have it in there. You can also get the selenium you need from 2 Brazil nuts every day. Doesn't matter if they have chocolate. And again, it's been shown to decrease your risk of getting influenza. Number 5 on my list is melatonin. Again, we talked about it before. Natural hormone, anti-cancer, anti-COVID, decreases inflammation, helps you get to that REM sleep where your body heals itself. No harm. Most people tolerate it well. You can start at a low dose. If you don't have cancer, you don't have to push it to a high dose. If you have a history of cancer, try to get to between 10 and 20 milligrams. It helps actually, it decreases blood vessel growth, which is how cancers grow. They have to put down blood vessels to grow. If you don't make those blood vessels, you won't grow. Vitamin A is also really important for your immune system and your mucosal immunity, but it is a vitamin that you can get toxic from. So again, I like most people to get it from their good multivitamin, usually in a range of about 5,000 units. And again, in the natural form is better than the synthetic form. But mostly I have people get that through a multivitamin rather than bolus it in very high doses. Number 7, elderberry. Elderberry is a flower, and it's packed with vitamin C, fiber, and antioxidants. 500 milligrams daily has been used extensively to prevent influenza, and it's been shown actually it's just used for influenza. It works really well. It's not been shown yet with COVID whether it helps, but it's a great antiviral, and probably it does. So again, there's a lot of combination antiviral supplements that include elderberry, and you can also get it in a kind of nice grape flavored liquid that's really concentrated called sambucol. That's another good form of it. So again, elderberry is a good tool to have. Do you take it all the time? You don't need to, but it doesn't hurt as a good antiviral. And if you get sick, you might want to get more of it. I mentioned the green tea in 4 cups daily, which decreases inflammation, helps your immune system, and actually has been shown to target a process involved in COVID-19 replication. So why not drink green tea? Easy. You don't have to take a supplement. The turmeric curcumin I mentioned to you before also decreases inflammation, decreases viral activity for COVID-19. I know I wasn't supposed to talk only about COVID, but can't ignore it during this time period. So, but again, that turmeric makes many people not need ibuprofen. Ibuprofen and Aleve, while cheap and while they work well for pain, they cause ulcer disease, they cause kidney problems and liver problems. They are not health food. Turmeric is a food. It's good for you. It's anti-inflammatory. It gives pain control, just like ibuprofen, if you're using a good enough dose of it. So again, if you use natural products, you're less likely to harm your body. The last supplement I was going to mention is called NAC, capital NAC. And NAC, which is one amino acid, is a precursor to glutathione. Glutathione is the master antioxidant of your body. When you're inflamed, when you have anything bad going on, you have what's called oxidative stress. There's free electrons that are being released. Those things can damage your DNA. Glutathione is what goes in and quells them and keeps them quiet and helps you repair things. It's a good pain reliever. And again, it's been shown to decrease the severity of influenza, and it helps prevent pulmonary fibrosis, right? One of the reasons people are dying from COVID is their lungs get stiff and unelastic and filled up with fluid and fibrosis. NAC can prevent that. It's a great, for people with COPD, taking NAC twice a day is actually recommended. It's good for any pulmonary disease. Really, it's probably good for just about anything, but particularly on the pulmonary line now. There's many other kinds of supplements that help your immune system and your resilience, things like medicinal mushrooms, maitake, shiitake mushrooms. These are great things to eat. They taste delicious, and putting them into your foods, are great. You can get pill forms of them, but again, eating more wild mushrooms is a good thing for you. Plus, it's fun. Quercetin, resveratrol, beta-glucans, Chinese skullcap, licorice root. These are other things that really help your immune system. They're on the list of things to consider to take to decrease your risk of getting or dying from COVID, which again, you can look at this list, which is really very nice by the Institute of Functional Medicine. They list the supplements and actually tell you what they do. Do they decrease viral growth, or do they help your immune system more diffusely? And again, you can look at these charts and just see what makes sense to you. And if you're really somebody who doesn't really want to do much of it, then again, at least get your D, C, and zinc, maybe you get a combination antiviral that has some of that elderberry or beta glucans or vitamin C and zinc and, some of that puts it in a combo thing. But give yourself some tools that help you feel stronger and less vulnerable to getting something that's going to take you out. Right? We don't know that we're going to avoid getting COVID, but we want to be one of the people that's asymptomatic or has a mild disease and gets over it. You don't want to be one of those people with long disease. And what is long disease about? It's about that inflammation persisting. People that were nutritionally deficient, probably, maybe there's a genetic predisposition. But when their body's trying to fight the virus and it can't do it and it keeps dumping out all the immune cells to try and attack it, it's like it goes into overdrive. And it turns out that then starts causing the problems that end up causing a lot of their chronic problems. Well, again, things like NAC or glutathione, anti-inflammatory things like turmeric and fish oil, those should actually help decrease that and help people not suffer for so long.
Sheryl, I think we're going to have to go to questions really quick, and we're going to have to end at 3. We've got another program right after this one. But I will have a suggestion. I do have a suggestion that if anyone has questions, if you want to relay them to me, or we could, Sheryl, would you be willing to share your email? They could send a question directly to you, or do you want them to send them to me and I can forward them to you?
Why don't they send them to you to start off with? And again,
That'd be great.
It might be that we see that like 8 people have the same question. And so I could respond once to you that you could then, that might make more sense.
That would be great. That would be great. This
Sorry,
was
but
wonderful. It was very, very informational, and I really appreciate everything. And so everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Sheryl, I wrote down notes.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure there'll be questions.
How do we contact you?
So I will send everyone an email and with
okay.
my email address, and then you can just send me the questions, and that
okay.
will work it that way. Does that sound okay?
That sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate it, Sheryl. You did a wonderful job. Linda, thank you for being our
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yes, thank you very, very much.
Excellent.
I hope to see you again. Thank you.
Great. Glad you enjoyed it. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Stay well.
That was
well,
a fast hour.
Huh?
It
Good.
was a fast hour.
I didn't
That
realize
was a
it was
fast
taking up the whole
hour.
hour. Sorry. Excellent.
The time went really fast.
Thank you, Sheryl. Bye.
So
Bye,
welcome.
Sheryl.
Bye-bye.